Hello and welcome to Sound Librarian. My name is Stefan Schutz. I did not own a Nintendo NES when they first came out. I had friends who did, and I got to play on those. And that is when I basically had access to what I think is one of the best adventure games that's been made still, and that was the original Zelda. Now, from an audio point of view, the thing that I find really quite remarkable about the original Zelda was that it was a product of its time. It had very, very simple sound design and very simple capabilities for music. And yet it had this phenomenon which is, in my mind, a very, very Japanese phenomenon, in that it had a very short and quite simple musical track that had a fairly simple melody, and it just repeated over and over again. And yet it wasn't annoying. It certainly repeated, but it wasn't repetitive, in that it wasn't something that got on your nerves and drove you crazy while you listened to it. And this is what I mean by the Japanese phenomenon, in that the Japanese have an amazing skill at writing musical tracks that are very, very short and very simple, and yet are entertaining, or at least work in such a way that they do not get annoying with their repetitive behavior. This actually follows some of the very, very similar guidelines to producing audio for commercials, because you need to be able to get the point across very, very quickly, and quite often you're trying to make something that's catchy. But even commercials, television commercials, can be annoying. The catchiness in your head can be something that's frustrating. Whereas I think Zelda is a very, very good example of something which will sit in your head and you might find yourself humming it. But I've never found it, in all the years that I've played this game, I've never found it annoying. Now, I've owned Zelda on GBA, I've had a copy of on GBA, and recently I bought a Nintendo NES to be able to do these reviews, and I bought a copy of Zelda. And the game music now is as good as it ever was, and that original theme in its most basic form, I think, is the best version of it. So let's have a look at the original Zelda and some of the other aspects and some of the sound and the music, and perhaps try and understand a little bit of exactly what's been done here that has worked so well. Zelda has the theme which you can hear now, which is actually related to the opening theme that you hear at the title screen, which we saw right at the beginning of this video. Although the title music is just slightly differently presented to the music that you get while you're playing the game, which I think is a nice usage of this theme. So you get the bold opening theme from the title music, but when you get into the game, it's got a little bit more pace and a little bit more urgency to it, and it's very much sort of traveling music whilst Link is wandering around the realm. So this piece of music accompanies you pretty much everywhere you go above ground, and it just repeats. It just plays over and over again. And as I said, I've never found this to be annoying while I've played the game, and even when I've been listening to other people play the game, its repetitiveness has not annoyed me, and I think that's just an indication of the quality of the writing. So beyond the music, we have actually a very, very simple set of sound effects. The monsters themselves that are running around here and jumping around don't actually make any sounds. We get sounds for Link's attack sound, whether it's a stabby sound or a shooting sound, depending on which function he has available. And then there are other sounds which are generally the sounds you get for picking up of items, whether it's an indication of the monetary value of the item you've picked up, whether it's something to do with your health increasing. And then there are some interaction sounds of when you trigger things like doors and when you enter and exit the holes in the ground like the steps. And in fact, a lot of the little success sounds in this game are also sort of musical in nature. Now, none of that in itself is particularly that unusual in games of this genre. In a lot of cases, they needed to be fairly simple because of the capabilities of the console, and stylistically, these were quite common approaches to game sound design. But I just think that Zelda really was one of the first games that really achieved a very polished approach to the game sound and music. In general, the game just sounds really good. There are, of course, multiple themes, and we'll have a listen to the second theme now as we go into the underground environment. So here we have the secondary theme, I guess you could call it. This is for the dungeon aspects of the game. And again, very short, simple, looping piece of music. But again, I think it does a really remarkably good job of setting the environment, the ambience of the dungeon in which you're traveling. And again, I do not find it repetitive when I'm playing the game. Now, perhaps this is because I'm focusing on the game while I'm playing it, but also I think it's a very successfully written piece of music in that it is pleasant to listen to in some ways, and it's very much atmospheric to listen to. So from that point of view, it's quite acceptable to have it looping over and over again in the background. We, of course, have the various different sounds in here of when Link dispatches his enemies. But again, they're very simple sounds. So most of the sound effects are actually quite simple. The idea of opening doors, the idea of interacting with certain things within the environment, and there's not that many things that you interact with, there are a few. But the main thing within this game is the music and Link interacting, effectively fighting the adversaries that he comes up against. So as Link progresses through the dungeon, he comes across far stronger adversaries. And of course he picks up extra pieces of equipment. So as you can see here, I've now got a boomerang and that makes a sound, and I've gotten some extra pieces of equipment. What I really like about this room here is that there is an audio cue that is telling you very clearly that the main adversary, the main boss monster, I guess, of this level is in the next room. You can hear the screaming sound of the creature that's in the next room. So you're, again, left with no ambiguity of, okay, beware. You know, regardless of what it is in the next room, you know it's significant because you can hear it from a whole room away. And of course, when you pick up the goal, and then we're back outside and back into the usual traveling music. So the scope of the sound is really quite limited. You know, every single dungeon you go into has pretty much the same sound, and most of the sounds... We've probably heard most of the sounds you'll hear in the entire game within this short video. The game itself obviously has far more scope, but the audio is fairly simple, again, as I say, because of the limitations. However, Zelda, and I said this in the video when I'm referring to Sonic and Mario Brothers were both AAA games. Zelda was most definitely the AAA game of its era. So on the original NES, Mario Brothers and Legend of Zelda were both AAA games. And so putting them into that context, it's hardly surprising that these are the games that set the bar. These are the games that were copied over and over again. And it's also one of the reasons why the theme music from Legend of Zelda has been remixed dozens of times, reused in sequel games for Zelda, and generally is a very popular theme because of the love that people have for this entire franchise now. So the original Zelda has quite a lot of components from a musical point of view that are really quite interesting. There are various different themes depending on where you are. But I think they've all been very, very well written and are very, very effective. And it shows that a good composer can create music with very simple tools, very simple sounds, and still write something that is very good music. And that's where I place the original Zelda. Keep an eye out. We're going to be having a look at some more of the older games and all the way through to the current generation of consoles as we go through 101 video games you must listen to. Thank you very much for watching.